Hey friend, please subscribe. 1 second for you. Big deal for me.
I was 8, limping hard on a cold March night, and the rain came sideways. We were on the shoulder of Route 12, outside Riverbend. My granddad William stood beside me, holding my elbow with the hand that still worked. He hadn't spoken a full sentence since the stroke 2 months back, but his grip still had something in it. Steady, even now. My left sneaker was soaked through. My right leg dragged behind like it didn't know what it was supposed to be doing. I could feel the skin inside my heel tearing with every step, and I wasn't crying. Not that night. Headlights cut through the rain, yellow and low. A cab rolled to a stop in the slush, tires spitting water as it pulled to the edge. The driver leaned across the seat, window half down, and shouted over the storm, "You two need a lift or a rescue?" That was Jack Miller. Night driver, big hands, raspy voice, wore a flannel shirt open over a hoodie like he couldn't decide which season it was. Quick note before we jump in, drop a comment with the city or country you're listening from. It helps us see where everyone's tuning in and plan the best time for new stories. Thanks for watching Revenge by Frank. All right, let's get started. I squared up and told him, "My name's Anthony Powell. We need to get to Riverbend Credit Union, Green Street branch, by morning. My grandma's in the hospital. We need to pull money for her surgery." He looked at me. Really looked. Took in my limp, the soaked shoe, the old man beside me, and the way I was biting down hard to keep my voice from shaking. Jack didn't ask questions. "Kid," he said, "bank's shut for the night. But here's what's going to happen. You three are coming with me. Me and my wife Dorothy will put you up. We'll sort it at first bell." I didn't answer right away. Instead, I unzipped my coat and showed him the mutt wrapped in a threadbare towel against my chest. Rust-colored, shaking, nothing but bone and nerves. Found him behind the grocery dumpsters 2 days earlier. I whispered, "Can the dog come too?" Jack grinned. "Buddy, I don't leave passengers behind." The dog didn't weigh more than 20 pounds, if that. Some terrier mix with ears too big for his face. Vets say dogs like that live a long time if you let them sleep on your feet. Jack's apartment was upstairs from the cab depot on Hastings. Place smelled like garlic and old radiator heat. Dorothy opened the door in slippers, towel in one hand, ladle in the other. She sized me up once, then said, "Shoes off, bathroom left, soup in 5. She didn't ask who I was. Didn't blink when she saw Granddad's face or the dog under my coat. Just pointed me to the sink and started scrubbing the pup clean while Jack held my shoe over the stove burner, rotating it like it was a marshmallow. The whole place stank like wet fur and onions. I told them about Grandma Barbara between spoonfuls, that her chest had started acting up just last week, that she'd saved every penny under her maiden name, that the power of attorney had Granddad's name on it, not mine, that she was in the ICU and we had to reach the account before morning. Jack's eyes changed when I said it. Dorothy didn't speak. She just set down a plate of bread and said, "Eat first, talk after." I ate like someone was going to take the plate away if I looked up too long. Later, Jack gave Granddad a pillow and helped him stretch out on the pullout. Dorothy tucked a blanket over me and the pup, who had finally stopped shivering and was curled against the inside of my bad leg, like it was his job to keep me warm. "I'm naming him Rusty," I told her. She kissed my forehead. "Good name." And I swear, for the first time in I don't know how long, I didn't hear my mother Nancy's voice in my head. No screaming, no glass breaking, no doors slamming. Just the hum of the radiator, the creak of pipes, and Jack's boots by the front door. I lay there in that borrowed bed and thought, if we make it to morning, maybe this turns. I kid you not, that night saved my life. At 8:10 sharp, Jack walked me and Granddad through the double doors of Riverbend Credit Union. The air inside was warm and stale, smelled like coffee and printer toner. The line was already 8 deep, people shifting in place, checking their watches. Rusty tugged a little on his leash, ears flat, sensing something wasn't right. The security guard, blue uniform, name tag that said Dave, held a palm out. "Line starts over there." Jack didn't blink. Medical emergency. Let the kid talk. Dave looked at Granddad, who was leaning heavy on Jack's arm, then at me, soaked sock still squishing inside my sneaker, then finally gave a nod. Manager's in back. I'll buzz. We were led past the line, past the teller windows, into a small office with beige walls and a desk covered in paperwork. Mr. Edwards sat behind it, flipping through files with gloves on his voice and shine on his shoes. He had a look like this wasn't the first emergency of the day, and he was already done with it. He didn't look up when we walked in, just motioned for us to sit. Name? I cleared my throat. Barbara Elkins. She's my grandma. William Powell is her husband. I'm Anthony. Her account's under her maiden name. We need to pull the money for surgery. She's in County General. ICU. Edwards finally raised his head. Glasses perfect, hair combed like a lawyer in a brochure. He reached for the folder I handed over and started flipping. Power of attorney, notary stamps, ID copies, everything we had. This is a time deposit, he said. Restricted terms. Your authority's questionable. Bring the account holder. Granddad wheezed out something like a grunt. I said it louder. She's on a machine. She can't come. Then we're done here. He tapped the desk twice like he'd just ruled from a bench. I looked up at him and said, "Please, it's her money. She put his name on it. We just need to—" Jack stepped forward, slow and controlled. "Follow your own rules, man. This is valid." Edwards didn't even flinch. He hit the buzzer under the desk and said, "Escort them out, please." We were walked back through the lobby like we'd stolen something. I was shaking so hard my leg gave out, and I hit the wall on the way out. Rusty whined low against my shin. Nobody in that bank made eye contact. Jack muttered, "Let's move," and we piled into the cab. Tires screeched on the way out of the lot. We reached County General in under 10 minutes. But it didn't matter. A cardiologist with red eyes and a wrinkled collar came into the family room and gave it to us straight. She passed 30 minutes ago. Her heart couldn't hold out. Grandma Barbara was 82, stronger than anyone gave her credit for, except in the end. Granddad made one sound, like the air left his lungs in reverse, and clutched his chest right there in the hallway. Jack caught him before he hit the floor. Nurses came running. Someone called a crash team, and they wheeled him off with machines clicking and voices sharp. I followed, hand in his until they had to strap him down. He blinked at me hard, like he was trying to form words he didn't have. 2 days later, he didn't make it either. They let me see him before. Just me. He had a photo of Grandma tucked in his hospital gown pocket. I tucked it tighter and told him I'd take care of things. I don't know if he heard me, but I said it anyway. We brought the folder back to the Miller's place. Dorothy didn't ask anything. She just took it and slid it into the top drawer of the bedroom closet, next to a faded quilt and a jewelry box with no key. Then I cried into her blouse, loud and long and with my whole body. I'm not embarrassed to say it. She held me tight and rubbed the back of my head like she'd done it 100 times before. "You're not alone, Tony," she whispered. "Not anymore." The next morning, Officer Damian King met Jack in the cafeteria downstairs. Local guy, not much older than Jack, looked like he carried every call he'd ever taken in his shoulders. He sat with us over plastic coffee cups and told Jack everything. The welfare checks, the missing pension payments, the anonymous tips about yelling and broken furniture. My name was already in the system, at risk. My mother's name was in the notes, Nancy Powell, flagged for unresolved domestic concern. Dorothy closed her eyes. Jack said, "We'll take him." Damien said, "If you do, I'll back you, whatever it takes." We buried my grandparents 4 days after Grandma passed, 2 days after Granddad. The church handled most of it. Officer King got Nancy to sign the release paperwork, though she made sure to scream about it on the sidewalk first. Showed up sour and loud, eyeliner smeared and coat inside out, demanding someone pay her bus fare before she even asked where I was. I didn't go near her. Jack stepped between us before I had to. Half the neighborhood came to that funeral. People I didn't even know. Ladies from the bingo hall, 3 mechanics from Jack's shop, Dorothy's co-workers from the school cafeteria. The preacher's voice cracked a little during the eulogy, but he kept going. Said they were steady folks who raised the kind of boy you don't see enough of anymore. That stuck with me. The adoption papers started moving that week. Damien made sure nothing got stalled. By the time the frost left the ditches, I had a real bed in a real room with clean sheets and a desk by the window. Rusty snored at my feet every night, like it was his job to remind me this wasn't a dream. Looking back, I should have known then how easy it was for the system to shrug off a kid. That shrug? It turned into a scar I still feel every time someone says, "We did all we could." Mornings in the Miller house started early. Dorothy ran the cafeteria over at West Ridge Elementary, and breakfast wasn't optional. She moved through the kitchen like a drill sergeant with eggs instead of orders. "What's your plan today?" she'd say before the first fork hit the plate. First person to talk usually ended up doing dishes. I learned to talk fast. I liked that routine more than I ever admitted. It made me feel anchored, like each day came with its own blueprint. Jack worked nights and came home smelling like diesel and wet leaves, dropping change in a glass jar by the toaster labeled in thick black marker, "Tony's leg." Rusty would bark once and then flop back on his blanket under the table. Jack always pointed at him and said, "This little bed hog again?" Rusty would twitch his ears like he didn't care, because he didn't. The ortho doc, Dr. Hollis, brought out a chart that looked like it belonged in a shop manual. The plan was tibial reconstruction, screws and pins, followed by months of PT. He didn't sugarcoat it. "It'll hurt, you'll curse us, but if you follow the plan, you'll walk straighter, maybe even run." The estimate landed on Dorothy's lap like a slap, $14,600. I didn't say anything in the car, just stared out the window at passing traffic, my busted leg throbbing in the cold. That number might as well have been Mars. That night, Jack emptied the jar and smoothed out every crumpled bill and coin. Dorothy folded a 20 into an envelope and said, "We'll find the rest." What started as coins became something bigger. The envelope turned into a small cardboard box, and then that box traveled. Dorothy took it to her church group. Jack brought it to the Union Hall. There was a bright orange can at the depot labeled Tony's Fix-It Fund. A custodian handed Dorothy a folded 50 without a word. A lunch lady gave me a bag of cookies and told me to stay brave, sugar. A week later, that same woman slipped an envelope into my pocket and walked away. The surgery came fast, 3 days of paperwork and a ride to Mercy Regional at dawn. I don't remember much except the heat of the lights and the bone-deep ache that settled in after. Pain like that doesn't let you think. It just sits on your chest and dares you to breathe. I chewed through a washcloth the first night, trying not to scream. Dorothy stayed up with me, cool rag on my forehead, one hand on my chest. Jack carried me to the bathroom without asking if I needed help. He just lifted me, like the weight didn't matter, and set me down like I was glass. Rusty wouldn't leave my side. The first time the pain spiked so bad I thought I'd black out, he crept onto the bed and put his chin on my knee. No bark, no whine, just pressure. It helped more than the meds. Recovery was slow. At first it was a walker, then crutches, then that stupid gray cane with the squeaky rubber tip. I learned how to sit down without screaming, how to go up 3 steps without tipping over, how to swallow frustration without choking on it. Dorothy said, "Every inch forward is a win. Don't forget that." By August, I ditched the cane. My walk was crooked, but it was mine. Jack took me to the pool at the Y and said, "Water's easy on joints. Float first. We'll work up to kicking." I hated it at first, how slow I moved, how much stronger everyone else looked, but I kept at it. I could move without grinding, and that mattered. It gave me something to control. School hit different after that. Clean clothes, packed lunches, a face that didn't flinch when someone raised their voice. I wasn't the kid who smelled like smoke anymore. I was the kid who knew long division and could read upside down. That earned me more than I expected. Dorothy used cooking to teach me math without making it a lecture. Tablespoons to cups, cups to trays. she'd say while laying out lunch for 300 kids. Think like a baker. Numbers need to work in batches. She let me help her plan the Friday menu. Chicken tenders with sweet potatoes if the weather dipped, mac and cheese if it rained. I didn't know it then, but that work wired my brain into order. It gave me a way to see the world that made sense. Officer King came by some evenings. Never knocked like a cop, always like a neighbor. 2 taps, soft. He didn't give speeches, just sipped coffee and told stories. A guy who tried to steal a vending machine in broad daylight. A couple who forgot they were driving with a baby goat in the back seat. One time he said, "You know what gets you through the job? Good people and strong coffee. Mostly the people." I listened hard, even when I didn't say much. He always left with a wave and a, "You're doing all right, Tony." Those words stuck too. Rusty learned the neighborhood routes by heart. He'd walk me to the end of the block, wait while I caught my breath, then wag like we'd won something. Every single time. He knew which houses had soft grass and which ones had cats to avoid. The Millers weren't rich. They didn't buy fancy clothes or go on trips. But they were steady. Jack fixed what broke. Dorothy cooked what we had. And if they ever argued, they did it in whispers when they thought I was asleep. I didn't need perfection. I needed steady. For a boy who grew up with slammed doors and glass on the floor, steady felt like grace. I was 13 when Damien made the kind of mistake only someone who cares too much makes. He was breaking up a porch beer party at Nancy's place on Elway Street, 6 adults pretending they didn't see his patrol car roll up, and he mentioned something he shouldn't have. He said, "Barbara had that old deposit, you know. Big one. Still sitting there. Like it was harmless. Like the people on that porch were decent enough to let the words stay put. Bad words travel faster than good ones." That sentence flew straight into the wrong ears. 2 afternoons later, our doorbell rang. I thought it was Jack, home early from the depot with his pockets full of grease and jokes. I didn't peek. Stupid move. I just swung the door open with Rusty pawing at my ankle. The smell hit first. Cheap vodka, old hairspray, and something sharp underneath, like resentment soaked in sweat. My mother leaned in the doorway with one hand on her hip, face powdered thick, eyes hard as screws. "Sunshine," she said, syrupy, her voice stretching the word until it curdled. "Where does Grandpa keep the papers?" I froze. She didn't. She shoved her way in like she still lived there, scanning the living room, the hall, the kitchen, all while ignoring me like I was a lamp she might trip over. I managed. "They're Dorothy's now. You don't—" She moved fast, faster than I remembered. Her palm hit my shoulder, spun me, and pushed me straight into the bathroom. I stumbled backward over the rug and hit the side of the tub. Before I could stand, she yanked a chair from the hallway and jammed it under the doorknob. "Stay put," she snapped. "Adults are talking." Rusty lost his mind on the other side of the door, barking sharp and frantic, claws scraping the linoleum. I slammed both palms against the door until they stung. "Let me out! I mean it, Mom! Stop!" She didn't answer. Drawers opened. Hangers rattled. I knew the sound of her rifling through things. Fast, greedy, ripping anything that got in her way. The apartment shook with it. Neighbors banged on the shared wall, yelling for quiet. But Nancy didn't care. She never had. I tried the knob again, but the chair held. Rusty barked himself hoarse, then whined, then barked again. I kicked the door once, twice, over and over, until my bad leg throbbed and my good one shook. Nothing changed. The apartment finally went quiet. Then footsteps. Slow, purposeful. The front door opened and closed with a sharp click. I shoved the chair hard enough to scrape the paint and burst into the hallway. She was gone. So was the manila folder that had held every one of Grandma Barbara's documents. I knew it before I checked the closet. I knew it from the cold air in the living room and the crooked rug by the entryway. She always left a mess behind. Dorothy came home an hour later. She found me sitting on the floor, hands trembling, Rusty pressed against my hip like he was trying to hold me together. She knelt down fast and wrapped her arms around me. "What happened?" "Tony, talk to me." I told her everything in short, angry bursts. Her face stayed steady, but her jaw worked the way it did when she cooked something complicated, and the timing mattered. Jack showed up 15 minutes later. One look at the apartment, the tipped chair, my swollen palms, and he went straight to the bedroom closet. He opened each drawer slow, like he already knew. When he got to the top drawer, he stopped. He shut it again and said, "Bank papers are gone." No yelling, no pacing, just that. The night felt heavy after that. Dorothy heated soup I couldn't taste. Jack made a phone call I didn't hear. I sat at the table staring at the toaster slot like it was going to give me answers. Rusty lay under my chair, pressed so close his ribs touched my ankles. We didn't sleep much. At dawn, Damien showed up in full uniform, hat tucked under his arm. He didn't wait to be invited in. "She got the money," he said as soon as he stepped inside. Edwards used a code, Deceased Depositor Override. DDOVR, that's the short version. It lets them release funds early if there's proof the depositor is dead. Dorothy asked, "How did she even get approval?" Damien sighed hard. "She brought a notarized affidavit. Next of kin. Bank honored it. They tacked on a processing fee and sent her off." The time deposit had sat untouched since Grandma's death. With Granddad gone too, Nancy used next of kin to reach through policy and grab it. Jack leaned on the counter. So she stole it, and the bank walked it out for her. Damien didn't look at me at first. When he finally did, it wasn't pity. It was something heavier. We filed the report. "But the ink says she's family. The bank says policy. I'm sorry." He left the apartment quietly, the door shutting soft behind him. No one spoke for a while after that. Dorothy finally put a mug of cocoa at my elbow and said, "This will not be the end of you." I wanted to believe her. I stared at the steam rising off the mug until it faded and the top turned skin-like and cold. That night, Rusty wouldn't leave the bedroom doorway. He wedged himself against it like a furry doorstop, making sure no one else came through. Every time I shifted in bed, he cracked an eye open to check the hall. I lay awake, breathing through the ache in my chest that had nothing to do with bones. I didn't make speeches to myself. I didn't promise revenge or fairness. I didn't pretend things were even now. I just made a decision, small and sharp and solid. I'd learn exactly what made men like Edwards feel safe saying policy while people bled. And I'd use that knowledge one day. Then I got up, crossed the room, and shut the bedroom door myself. I didn't hit high school expecting miracles. I expected work, and that's what I got. Algebra 2 was brutal some days, but it kept my brain busy, cleaner than rage, quieter than grief. Jack always said, "You can only carry one weight at a time. Pick the one that moves you forward." For me, that was numbers. I picked up shifts after school, mostly gas station, sometimes kitchen duty, sometimes scrubbing out the cab Jack let me ride along in. I paid attention when he spoke, because Jack didn't waste words. He taught me how to change oil without spilling a drop, and how to spot a customer's mood before they even said hello. "People who yell at you first thing aren't yelling at you. They're yelling at something they can't name," he said, handing me a socket wrench. "You let 'em feel heard, you win." Dorothy made me run her cafeteria line twice a month. That wasn't optional. She'd hand me the clipboard, point at the freezer, and say, "Inventory. Watch for shrinkage. No freebies to your buddies." She taught me how to stretch a budget and how to turn a busted fryer into a math lesson. What's 5 trays short on a Wednesday? 40 kids hungry. You find it before they do. That kind of pressure built something in me I didn't hate. I learned to keep pace with adults, to finish what I started, to double-check totals before calling them done. Coach Marston got me into swimming. He'd seen me limp down the hallway and figured water might help. I didn't win any heats, didn't care. I finished every lap, and that mattered. The pool didn't care if you were broke or busted. It just asked if you'd show up again. Saturdays belonged to Rusty. That dog had more energy than a 6-year-old on Halloween. He dragged me out of bed before dawn and pushed through the front door with his tail like a propeller. We ran slow, my right leg clicking on bad days like a loose hinge. I learned to pace by breath, not pride. It was one of those mornings when I met Grace Evans. Ponytail, headphones, hoodie tied around her waist. She was steady, not fast, just moving like someone who knew where she was going. Rusty cut right across her path, leash dragging like he forgot how to dog. She laughed instead of yelling, bent down, and scratched behind his ears. "He always ambush people like that?" she asked. "Only the ones who smell like cinnamon," I said, which was true. She smelled like a bakery in fall. We swapped names and ran the next stretch together. Ended up grabbing coffee at Dee's Diner the following weekend. No plans, no pressure. Just two people with shoes full of gravel and something steady building under the conversation. She studied special ed at Riverbend State, worked nights tutoring kids who needed more time and patience than the world usually gave. I told her about Jack and Dorothy and Rusty. She told me about her sister Susan, 12, gymnast, bad fall off a balance beam, spinal damage, chair and braces now. "She pretends it doesn't bother her," Grace said, stirring her tea too long. "But it does. We didn't call it dating at first, just runs and coffee. That kept it clean while I finished high school. I was a junior. She was a freshman at Riverbend State. 2 years between us, but the same direction. We waited until I turned 18 to name it. We told Jack and Dorothy the same night. I thought Jack would raise an eyebrow, but he just handed me a dish towel and said, 'Clean the table too.' Dorothy set ground rules. No overnights, no skipped classes, no talking about forever until we could pay for dinner ourselves. I agreed to all of it without blinking. We kept things steady, clean, focused. Grace had boundaries like I had locks, tight, unflinching, never cruel. That fall, I started helping her family with fundraisers, pancake breakfasts at the Union Hall, a garage sale on Maple Street that pulled in $200 and 3 blisters. We passed out flyers and collected envelopes from the teacher's lounge. Quiet cash in quiet hands. Dorothy cooked trays of baked ziti like she was feeding an army. Jack raffled off free cab rides with a grumble and a wink. I shook hands and counted bills until my knuckles ached. Every time someone dropped in a 5 or a 10, I felt something build, like trust layered in quarters and creased singles. Susan came to one of the breakfasts. She rolled her chair through the crowded hall like a pro, cracking jokes and dodging feet. I liked her instantly. She didn't fake smiles. She earned them. When I sent in my application to Riverbend State, I listed economics as my major. Welding was a solid backup, but I chose numbers for one reason. They had power. Numbers had been used on me my whole life, to deny, delay, dismiss. I wanted them on a leash, not breathing down my neck. Acceptance came in a plain envelope. No confetti. Just a letter that said, "We're glad to have you." I pinned it to the fridge next to Rusty's vet schedule and Dorothy's casserole calendar. That fall, I moved into a dorm with cinder block walls and a view of the river smokestacks. The mattress felt like cardboard, and the heater groaned like a ghost. But it was mine. I still ran with Rusty on Saturdays. Even if I had to drive back across town to do it, I made time. He wagged like I'd been gone a year, and slept with his head on my foot like always. Grace didn't try to change me. She didn't ask me to soften or stretch. She let me be who I was, and made me want to be a little more anyway. That feeling. It was new, and I didn't plan on wasting it. Susan rolled her chair like she was born with wheels. Fast corners, sharp pivots, a little cocky smirk when she hit the brakes with one hand and spun a pencil in the other. Her jokes were faster than most people's thoughts. Dry, brutal, sometimes too honest. I knew what that was. That edge came from trying to cover the fear with something louder. I'd seen that look in the mirror for years. The rehab center she needed quoted $21,300 for a 12-week intensive program. I read the breakdown twice. Then the denial letter from the insurance company came, not medically necessary. And I read that one 3 times, each word burning hotter than the last. Grace said nothing the first night. Just put the letter on the fridge with a magnet that said, "Mind this mess," and walked out of the kitchen. Dorothy didn't say much either. She just looked around our tiny kitchen, nodded once, and got to work. By the next evening, our counter was stacked with labeled pies and foil-topped casseroles. The fridge groaned from the weight of soups in repurposed yogurt tubs. Dorothy had handwritten price tags on every single item. Chicken pot pie, $10, apple crisp, $6, lasagna, $14. No rounding. She said exact numbers built trust. Grace ran the sign-up sheets, made Google forms, passed out flyers to everyone from her tutoring job to her old gymnastics coach. Jack made deliveries in his cab after his regular shift ended. I caught him nodding off on the couch once, takeout box on his lap, but he didn't complain. "Kid needs to walk," was all he said. I built the fundraiser page on an old laptop with keys so worn you had to guess the letters. Took me 3 hours just to get it live. I recorded a video that showed Susan moving between the bars, sweaty and angry, refusing to quit. Then I posted a budget breakdown. Nothing hidden, no fluff. Just the numbers, rehab cost, what we had, what we needed. Damian King shared the link on the neighborhood page and pinned it. Wrote one line, "Help the Evans family walk forward." That first night, we got a $5 donation and a comment from someone named Ruth, who remembered Susan as the girl who helped my daughter tie her skates at the rec center. After that, the money started trickling in. It was never big, 10 here, 25 there. A church group from across town sent $200 with a note that said, "For the girl who doesn't quit." A retired teacher mailed a $50 check and a short letter about watching Grace grow up with grit. I kept a public ledger online and updated it every night before bed. Every dollar received, every expense logged. This time it wasn't about jars or anonymous cans. People saw where their money went, and they gave more because of it. But it wore on us. Grace and I snapped at each other one Thursday night. I'd missed Susan's therapy session to finish a macroeconomics midterm. Grace was quiet at first, then not. "She asked if you were coming," she said, folding laundry harder than necessary. "I had a test," I shot back. "College isn't a hobby." "She's your family too," Grace said, and it landed like a gut punch. "I'm doing this for her," I said, voice too sharp, "but I still have to keep my future together." She didn't raise her voice. That made it worse. "Then maybe get your priorities straight." I left without slamming the door, but I wanted to. I walked 5 blocks, got cold, turned around, and came back with a cup of her favorite coffee and the worst apology speech I've ever mumbled. She listened, arms folded, then said one thing, "Just show up." And I did. By week 9, Susan managed to hold herself up on the parallel bars for 4 whole seconds. Her arms trembled, her face twisted, but she held. I was there. Grace recorded it. Jack whistled. Dorothy wiped her eyes and blamed dust. Susan hit the bell we'd set on the wall with a wild swing, and the clang echoed through the whole building. That bell became tradition. Every new milestone, longer hold, straighter form, 2 steps in braces, we rang it. It was cheap and tinny, but it meant everything. By spring, you could hear it through the Evans porch window. Grace kissed me one Tuesday evening after Susan's session. It wasn't the first time, but that time she pulled back just enough to whisper, "Your family." Those 2 words wrecked me more than any bad grade or broken promise I'd ever lived through. I didn't answer right away. I just nodded, throat too full to speak. Jack high-fived Susan like she'd just won state. Dorothy called her tougher than a cast-iron skillet. Rusty curled up under Susan's chair like he understood every word, tail tapping softly against the floor. We never raised the full 21 grand, but the clinic made adjustments, dropped some charges, and said the rest would be handled internally. I think one of the therapists kicked it up the chain after seeing Susan's progress. None of us asked for details. We just kept showing up. And one lesson. No economics class could teach me. Loving people means your time isn't yours anymore. Your sleep, your weekends, your bandwidth, they get used up, handed over, worn thin. And I also learned I didn't want it any other way. The day I started at the credit union, I wore a clip-on tie from Goodwill and stiff shoes Jack polished for me the night before. They didn't fit right, but they looked clean. I was 22, just out of Riverbend State, and walking into the same building where I'd once stood soaking wet, begging for my grandmother's money. Started as a teller. Basic stuff. Cash, forms, fake smiles. I kept my head down, learned fast, didn't talk unless I had to. Edwards shook my hand the first week, asked where I'd gone to school, and clearly didn't recognize me. Good. I wanted him relaxed. I worked every lunch. I don't mean eating, I mean watching. Studying the system behind the screens. Core software older than I was, filled with drop-down codes, half-broken scripts, backdoors no one had cleaned up since the Y2K bug. That's where the footprints live. Not in the polished reports they show the board. In the old flags and internal memos buried 5 menus deep. Dormant deposits caught my eye early. Accounts that hadn't been touched in over 7 years. Interest still accruing. Owners dead or moved. Fees slowly nibbling away like termites. Edwards's office didn't send reminders. Didn't call heirs. Just let the money sit until policy gave it permission to be redistributed. That word made my jaw clench. Twice I watched a temporary authorization get turned into a full release after a short, closed-door chat upstairs. One of those used the same exception code I remembered from my grandma's folder. DDOVR. Deceased Depositor Override. I had written it down in my notebook like a bullet casing. Marcia Alvarez worked in compliance. Quiet, sharp-eyed, did everything by the book even when the book had been edited in pencil. She didn't trust me at first. I was young, too clean, and I asked too many questions. I earned her trust the day I handed her a reconciled ledger no one had balanced in 18 months. She didn't thank me. She just nodded once and said, "Don't bring me junk, bring me truth." I carried that with me. Meanwhile, a loan officer named Ken Dobson started acting like we were on the same team. Smirks in meetings, winks in hallways. He liked clients who ran cash-heavy operations, coin laundries, food trucks that didn't pay taxes, fake LLCs with half-finished websites. He liked round numbers too. Perfect zeros. Round numbers make me itch. One night I stayed late and watched his approvals folder. He'd pushed through a bridge loan for $60,000 with no backup employer and a co-signer who'd moved out of state 2 years earlier. I printed it out and added it to a folder I'd already started at home. Black plastic. Cheap. Labeled in small block letters. For later. Inside, I kept printouts, internal memos, date stamps, audit trails, and system logs. Every signature, every code, every form with the initials KD or ME in the corner. I also kept a second set of everything on an encrypted USB, zipped inside a bag of rice in the pantry. You think that's paranoid? That's experience. When you grow up watching people vanish their mistakes, you don't give them the chance to vanish yours. One Friday afternoon, Edwards called me into his office. He smiled the whole time. 2 cups of coffee sat waiting. One black, one with cream and sugar, like he knew my preference. His voice was quiet, almost paternal. "You've got a good head, Tony," he said. "You're precise. That's rare. There's opportunity here if you want it. A growth track." I said nothing. He leaned back in his chair. "Not everyone sees the bigger picture. You do. And sometimes we make choices to help the system run smoother. Some oddities, sure, but small ones. Paperwork can lag behind people's needs." I nodded like I was considering it. Like I hadn't already printed 6 memos he'd written to justify those exact oddities. "I'm here to learn," I said. His smile didn't slip. "Good. That's the right mindset." I walked out, went straight to my desk, and wrote the hour and minute down in the folder. Edwards's pitch wasn't unusual. It was a test. He wanted to know what kind of man I was. I decided to let him keep wondering. The deeper I got into the system, the more I saw how the lie was built. Not in one day, but in layers. A policy ignored here, a name skipped there. If you didn't look close, it felt clean. But I remembered the way that teller had looked at me when I was 8. Like I was noise. Like I didn't belong. Every time I opened the policy manual, I saw one word in my head. Closed. That's what they told me at that desk. That day, with my grandfather trembling beside me. Closed. And I decided that word was going to change. Not for them. For us. 3rd year in, Ken Dobson tried to pin a ghost loan on my login. Short-term bridge loan. $68,000. Employer listed as Riverline Processing LLC, which didn't exist outside a dead web page and a disconnected number. The co-signer had a social that came back flagged for suspicious reuse. It sat in my approval queue like a live wire. Marcia found it first. She pulled me aside, voice flat but fast. "Why is this on your user chain?" I looked at the screen. "It's not mine." "I know," she said, "but it's under your ID." I felt my ears go hot, not from guilt, from being slow, from missing it, from not seeing how close they were willing to get. Edwards called me in before lunch. His office smelled like stale coffee and paper toner, same as always. He didn't say fraud. He said, "Maybe a leave of absence would do you good. Clear your head. You're tired." I wasn't tired. I was on fire, but I nodded like I was listening. "I'd rather not escalate anything that could have been accidental," he added, sipping his coffee like it wasn't poison. There it was. The threat. That same week I got a collections notice for a payday loan I'd never taken. $4,200. Signed with my name. Bounced across 3 different fake lenders and sold to a collector in Missouri. Nancy. She'd had my social back when I was a kid. I should have changed it after high school, but I didn't. I'd wanted to pretend I could outrun it. I couldn't. I drove to the last address she used, a yellow duplex with blacked-out windows and a padlock on the gate, code violation sticker on the front door, grass tall enough to hide a bike. She was long gone. I went home, sat at my desk, and froze my credit with all 3 bureaus, filed the theft report, tagged every account with password-only access and 2-factor lockout. None of that fixed Nancy, but it stopped the bleeding. Grace saw the paperwork spread across the table. She didn't say anything at first, just watched me work. Then she walked over, grabbed my sleeve and said, "You can't save everyone, but you can stop this." She meant the bank. Me. The rot I'd been tracking since day one. Her jaw was set tight. That look meant she'd already decided, and now it was my turn. That night I stayed up. 2 a.m., I was hunched at our kitchen table, folder open, sweat on the back of my neck. Every document laid out like a crime scene, date stamps, overrides, flagged memos. If I took this to the prosecutor, I'd be done at the bank, fired or frozen out. That paycheck covered our rent, groceries, Susan's braces, Jack's truck battery last month, Grace's tuition gap. I counted everything that could fall. Jack walked in from the spare room in his socks and poured 2 mugs of coffee without asking. He sat across from me, squinting at the folder. He didn't read it. He didn't need to. "If you're asking yourself whether you're a good man," he said, "you probably are. Do what you can live with." Rusty padded into the kitchen, gave me one soft whine, then pushed his nose under my hand. I scratched behind his ears. He trotted to the back door and scratched once, like it was time to go. I got up. I left a sealed copy of the folder in Jack's garage, inside a box marked "spare bulbs," taped it shut and said nothing. Dorothy asked if I wanted eggs. I told her no and kissed her on the forehead. Grace was pretending to sleep. I leaned in, pressed my lips to her temple and whispered, "Be proud of me later." She didn't open her eyes, but her fingers squeezed mine for half a second. Damian King was waiting at the courthouse steps in plain clothes, badge clipped to his belt. He looked older than before, tired in the way good cops get when they've seen too much and still keep showing up. He didn't ask what was in the bag. He just said, "Chain of custody matters. You hand it to intake and you walk away." I handed it over at 8:32 a.m. The clerk logged the envelope. Chain of evidence started. I walked out of that building like my shoes were made of lead. My phone buzzed twice. Unknown numbers. I didn't answer. I sat in my car and stared at the courthouse doors. For the first time in months, I didn't have a plan. Just a long hallway of what-ifs. Then Grace texted me. Just a heart emoji and one line. Dinner at my folks'. Don't be late. I laughed in the parking lot. Out loud. Alone. The kind of laugh that pulls your chest loose. Sometimes you need that kind of normal to not sink. The investigators didn't roll in with sirens. They came quiet. Badges in pockets. Soft shoes. Clipboards with dates already filled in. They asked calm questions and took copies first, then originals. Marcia handed everything over without blinking. Edward's office door stayed shut for 2 full days. Ken Dobson cracked first. He called me into an empty hallway and tried to talk smooth, like we were still playing the same game. I said one thing. Audit trail. Marcia pulled it up at the next compliance meeting. Every keystroke, every access time, every override, all of it tagged to his terminal. Ken went pale, then red, then quiet. He resigned the next morning to pursue new opportunities, which we all knew meant running before it stuck. The board moved fast after that. Edwards got suspended, pending investigation. They named me interim operations lead under a senior temp from regional. I didn't say yes right away. Marcia handed me a sticky note that just said, "Your files are clean. Boring saves people." I said yes the next day with my palms sweating. 3 months later, they made it official. Branch manager. Full title. Little plaque with my name on it and everything. That's when Edwards, still suspended pending investigation, asked for a private off-site meeting. I walked into the back booth at Dee's Diner like I had a right to be there. And I did. He started soft, fatherly sighs and phrases like, "We've all had to learn the hard way." Then he hit me with the line I'd been waiting years to hear again. "Bring the account holder." I let it hang in the air for a second. Then I leaned forward and said, "My name is Anthony Powell." His eyes twitched, doing the math. "I was the boy with the limp," I said. "I stood outside this door while my grandfather begged you for his wife's money. You slammed it shut." He looked old then, not tired, small. He offered to make it right. "I can help," he said. "Money, references, quiet resolutions." I told him, "I don't want favors. I want policy." That landed harder than anything else I could have said. I want auto letters for dormant accounts. I want dual approvals for overrides. I want no more lost and found for managers' friends. Charges landed 3 weeks later. Wire fraud, falsified records, abuse of authority. They walked him out with his coat over his wrists. I didn't go to the hearing. I went to Jack's and mowed the grass. We built a cleanup team from scratch. Marcia took compliance and didn't smile once. I built protocols. No release of funds without 2 independent verifications and a recorded call. "Slow is safe," I wrote on the staff bulletin. "Fast is what got us here." We created a small dollar loan program with fair interest and flexible repayment. It wasn't flashy, but it worked. Dorothy read the flyer and said, "If you had this when you were 19, you wouldn't have needed 3 jobs." She was right. I pulled the list of dormant accounts and made calls one by one. A widow in East River cried for 5 straight minutes when I told her husband's account hadn't been closed, just neglected. Then she laughed so hard she coughed. She said, "You're the first banker I ever heard say sorry." At night, Grace and I sat quiet again. No calls from lawyers, no whispering over spreadsheets. We talked about recipes, weekend plans, Susan's college search. By the time Susan hit senior year, she sent me a video clip that nearly made me drop my coffee. Her walking 1 full block with braces and a cane. No chair. Just slow, proud steps and a smile that could split concrete. Rusty snored through the whole thing, sprawled across the couch like a retired soldier. Grace pressed her cheek to mine and whispered, "We're okay now." In the quiet that followed, I felt something inside me ease up, like a knot finally finally loosening. Jack and Dorothy retired just after my 25th birthday. They didn't throw a party, didn't make a fuss. They just packed up their coats, handed in their keys, and moved to a little place outside Riverbend. Half an acre, a chicken coop, and 2 sagging lawn chairs with permanent butt prints. Jack said it was heaven, as long as the hens stayed quiet, and Dorothy didn't try to kill him with squash every meal. One hot August afternoon, Dorothy's back gave out bending over a raised bed. I found her stuck halfway to standing, teeth clenched, white-knuckled on the fence slat. I got her into the car. Rusty paced the hallway the whole time like a foreman waiting on a forklift. We checked into the ER at County General. Nurse Jessica King, Damien's cousin, recognized me, waved us through. She took Dorothy's chart, gave her a reassuring pat, and then dropped a casual grenade. "Your mother's down the hall," she said. "5th Bay, hip fracture, rough shape." I didn't answer, just nodded and walked Dorothy to her bed. After she was settled and the curtain pulled, I stepped away. My feet carried me without permission. 5th Bay. I stopped in the doorway. 10 full seconds. That's all I gave her. Nancy looked older than her years, but not fragile, just empty. Skin slack, mouth slightly open, eyes like old marbles. Flat. When she opened one, she didn't flinch, just squinted at me. "What are you staring at?" she asked, voice raw. "Nothing," I said, because that's what I had for her. I turned around and left, stopped at the billing desk on the way back. Quietly paid a chunk of her hospital tab with my debit card. Jessica gave me a look. "You could tell her yourself," she said. I shook my head. No need. Dorothy's diagnosis wasn't great, but it wasn't the end. Worse arthritis than before. Cortisone shots, ice packs, no weeding for a few weeks. She grumbled, but she squeezed my fingers when I brought her tea and muttered something about being lucky to have help. A week later, a fat envelope showed up at the branch. Thick, heavy, addressed in block letters. Anthony Powell, manager. Return address? None. The handwriting was familiar. Slanted, sharp, too hard on the paper like it was angry before the words even formed. Nancy had found out my title. Jessica must have said something. That's how it goes in small towns. Names get passed along even when they shouldn't. I turned the envelope over a few times. Pressed the corner. Couldn't bring myself to open it. Instead, I dropped it into the bottom drawer of my desk, under the spare mouse and the backup USB sticks. Still sealed. Still thick. Still sitting there the last I checked. I didn't need to read it. I already knew everything it could say. I got in the car that weekend and drove out to the cemetery just past Maple Ridge. The Powell stones were in the far corner, under a maple tree that dropped leaves like confetti every fall. I brought trimmers, cleared the weeds, wiped off the grit from the letters. I stood there a while, one hand on the cold top of Grandma's marker. I told them the truth, that I found my people, that Jack and Dorothy raised me with tired hands and clear rules, that Rusty still slept under my desk at the branch, that Susan sent a postcard from college with nothing on it but, "I stood today," that Grace made the kind of life I didn't think I could earn, and made me show up for it anyway. On the drive back, I stopped at a roadside stand for corn. Jack told a story about a rooster attacking a UPS driver, and Dorothy laughed so hard she snorted into her iced tea. Rusty flopped in the dust at my feet, muzzle white now, slower getting up, but still watching the whole yard like it was his job. The vet says some small mixes make it to 18 if luck stays kind. I'm 26 now, and if you ask me who raised me, I'll point to that porch. Before you head out, let me ask you this straight. If you were in Anthony's place, holding that letter after everything he lived through, would you open it or leave it sealed for good? If you've got hype, tap it to help this story reach more people. Hit subscribe and like because that support really matters, and drop a quick comment to tell me what you'd honestly choose. Love you guys.
YouTube picked this for you. Tap it. Let's see if they guessed right.